Being joined now by the executive director of the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, BAJI. It's the largest Black-led social justice organization representing nearly 10 million Black immigrants, refugees, and families living in the U.S. She's also a civil rights attorney, though. She is co-founder of Justice Warriors for Black Lives and Human Rights Advocacy, dedicated to fighting for human rights and Black liberation. Nana Gyamfi, Esquire, is joining us this morning. Welcome to the show, Attorney Gyamfi.
Thank you, Dominique. You did not add the Esquire. How are you?
Attorney Gyamfi, got to let him know. I know you have a lot to say, and it's not all jubilation because it's you. But your initial reaction to those three guilties to three charges, certainly this is rare, if nothing else.
I think it is rare. This is also a rare situation, right? I mean, it's not, and when I say rare, it's not a rare situation in the fact that you have police killing Black people, but the video, then over 9 minutes, the fact that this was shown in a way that really stirred up the entire world, I think makes it a unique situation. And so I wasn't surprised by the verdict at all. I thought that it would be very strange if it wasn't a hung jury, if there was going to be a verdict. I figured that the verdict would be guilty. So I wasn't surprised by that. And, I know just from doing the International Commission of Inquiry on systemic racist police violence against people of African descent, that the National Conference of Black Lawyers that I'm the president of, as well as NLG and the International Association of Democratic Lawyers, we did hearings, and one of the hearings that we did in front of an international commission of judges was George Floyd. And so we heard from his family, we heard from the attorneys, and it was clear that this was the case that it was going to be pretty hard for them to get out of. We know it could happen, but it was pretty clear that there was going to be some guilty verdicts, and I know the family feels some sense of relief. It's not a relief like, oh, now you can exhale and everything's okay. What I say to people is, imagine if it had been a not guilty, what the family would feel. And so the family, was spared that. And
to be honest with you, Attorney Gyamfi, I was very surprised. I was around for Rodney King, I don't know, Donovan Jackson. I just feel like there could be a long list. I was really surprised, to be honest with you. I was surprised at all three counts of guilty.
I think that if I was around for those cases as well, and, part of them in some form or fashion, but I think that it was a different time then. Yeah. I mean, at that time, I had just started practicing law myself. I was just getting out of law school. And the idea that you could even say out loud as an attorney, if I said the police lied, people were like grasping their pearls. You know what I mean? Like, oh, my God, say something like was mistaken, our movement, people were traumatized. They're like, you can't say the police lie. And, so it's clearly a testament to the work that has happened since that time. And
absolutely.
Not just with Black Lives Matter, but in general, the work that we have done as a people, as activists, as organizers, of course, culminating.
Although Black Lives Matter does deserve...
Black Lives Matter.
Although Black Lives Matter does deserve a lot of credit, and it's ironic that this is happening just as they're under attack by right-wing trolls and misguided lefties. And anyway, another show perhaps for another day, but they definitely deserve a lot of credit. I mean, because you say it's a different time, and you could say that. It's true, Rodney King, even though George Zimmerman wasn't a cop, he was a wannabe. Even Michael Brown, they weren't that long ago.
No, they weren't that long ago, and they're within the time period, right? And so in terms of the Black Lives Matter, and so I definitely am not saying that Black Lives Matter is not a big piece of it, but when we go back, as you said, talking about Rodney King, we also have to recognize that they stand on the shoulders of someone, right? They didn't just spring out of the sky.
A lot of someone's,
particularly in California and in Los Angeles. I mean, that's Daryl Gates means something to you and I. There's some folks that it don't mean too much to. They don't remember, but we do, and we know that there's been a lot. And you think about the Christopher Commission and all of these efforts to try to figure out how you can make policing better. And literally, Dominique, and you know this because I know you were there, some of these solutions people are coming up with, some of these conversations we're having, that was 1994, 93, 92. We're in 2021, still having those conversations. And so the difference, obviously, some things have shifted, and it's no question. And I think that in terms of, what's happening on the ground, and we've got to credit that made it different. It made it, plus technology, all these pieces, but it made it something that was more earth-shattering, more. I think the only things that we had in our time period that would be similar in terms of the earth, everyone paying attention, is Rodney King, Nelson Mandela getting out of prison, Geronimo getting out of prison. We didn't have as many things that had the whole world stop in the way that this murder of our brother George had the whole world stop, last year in that Freedom Summer.
It's Radio Free 102.3 KJLH, Compton, Los Angeles, Long Beach, and Inglewood. Attorney Nana Gyamfi is our guest. We're going to Eddie from L.A. Good morning, Eddie.
Hey, good morning, Dominique. Good morning. What I don't understand is that the mayor picks a chief of police. It's very simple for these guys to say, look, there's going to be no more of this, no more of that, no more of this. And if there is, you're going to be held responsible. But yet, chief of police after chief of police, incident after incident, when things go sour, everybody takes it out on the community, and they ruin the community when they can easily change out the chief. You could change out the mayor. And there's no need to burn these buildings down and get all crazy like.
Well, we know it's the White Lives Matter folks that have been burning and looting lately. So, and we know what that's about. That's about discrediting.
White Lives Matter, is that a new group? I haven't heard of that one.
It's called white supremacy. It's very old, actually, Eddie. But what's your point? I mean, what's your bottom line? You want to blame people for protesting instead of blaming police for killing people, and you want to blame individual cops
am I allowed
and police
to say what I'm going to say, or are you going to tell me what I'm going to say?
Well, this is my talk show, so we kind of go back and forth. And you want to blame police chiefs who do have some culpability, but there is obviously problems with the system because we keep having the same problems over and over and over again. So what's your bottom line, Eddie?
What I was just going to say is I just can't believe that Maxine Waters came out and said what she said as a congresswoman.
Okay.
The way she was speaking, I thought was way out of line. I think that everybody should learn from her mistake on how to be more professional at what they do.
Did you have a problem with anything that Ted Cruz said when he was telling people to storm the Capitol, which Maxine Waters never did? She never told anyone to storm any Capitol. She never told anyone to go fight.
Yet, but if I
what about Trump when he said those things? Are you against those things he said too when he was telling people to fight like hell? That was problematic for you too.
Dominique, I got to hang up, Dominique.
That's what I thought. Okay, bye-bye. All right, Attorney Nana Gyamfi, that's our resident Republican, Eddie. Your thoughts? He brought up a couple things. One, why not just fire police chiefs? Why do we need to protest? And the other thing, of course, pointing the finger at Maxine Waters. And by the way, the Congresswoman did not do any. She was in the context. You got to take it in the context. She's at a rally for Dante Wright, and she's saying we've got to be more confrontational. She's not saying go beat people up. She's saying confront your lawmakers, make a change. And if we were going to overturn trials every time a lawmaker made a comment about a case, including Derek Chauvin, by the way, which lots of other lawmakers have made comments about it, including the president, and they were not chastised or called out by that judge or anyone else for doing so.
Yeah, so, I mean, the first point, I laughed when he started the conversation because apparently he didn't hear the part where we were talking, Dominique, about how we have been around since before the Rodney King verdict. I mean, people talk about how people rising up, that property loss, et cetera, does nothing, and yet mysteriously, these are the times when people do go into the street, when there is property loss, when people are heard around the world. This is when things change. So people can say that those don't do anything, they don't work, they just hurt the community. And at the same time, there is, I think people forget about the aftermath. What happens in the aftermath? Does nothing happen? No. So it's almost as if people were talking, when folks were running off of the plantation and saying, see, you run off the plantation, you make Master mad. Now he's mad at all of us. Okay, that is possibly a consequence. However, we should not be trying to tell people that they cannot try to run off of the plantation, right? That rebellion somehow is not in a proper route to freedom. And people are going to push back when they are oppressed. People are going to rise up, thank goodness, when they are oppressed. Eddie may not be clear on the degree to which any freedom that he enjoys is the result of the rising up of people, and particularly black people. So, that's the problem he has, but he in the words of KRS-One, he must learn. With respect to Maxine Waters, the congresswoman, I get very annoyed when people try to tell black folks who have been through all that her generation of folks have been through, that they don't get to talk about and to offer to us advice and instructions on how we address the power of this system and what we need to do. This is nothing new. Congresswoman Waters is a person who took her own self to South America to find out and to see about how crack cocaine got into our communities. So that's her. That's her way. That's East St. Louis. You know what I'm saying? That's how she does. She is going to always say to us, and has always said to us, that we need to get up, stand up for our rights. And that is totally appropriate. There is nothing wrong with it. She did not tell people, she could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and no one would say anything. She didn't tell people, punch people, hit people, and don't worry, my lawyers will cover you. She didn't do any of that.
She did not. She sure didn't. All right, we're going to go to TJ calling us from Hollywood. Good morning, TJ.
Good morning, Dominique. North Hollywood.
Okay, NoHo. What's up?
Dominique, I want to speak first, commend the jury for getting it right out there and convicting that murdering killer cop. But I want to concentrate more on what's going on here in Los Angeles with Villanueva essentially sanctioning murder, thuggery, gangbanging right there in the sheriff's department with the executioners and the banditos that have been documented to be sheriff gangs. With the murder of Dante Taylor and with the murder of Andres Guardado and with the murder of Ezel Ford and just countless others, I think we should go back and look at some of those cases and bring some murder charges against some of those officers that got off. It just shouldn't start and end with Chauvin and George Floyd. We got thousands of George Floyds here in Los Angeles, even going back to Ron Settles, where the Signal Hill Police Department was documented to have murdered Ron Settles. And no one was ever held accountable for his death. So I just think that we should focus a lot of our energies on our sheriff department here in Los Angeles and how they participate in gangbanging, murder, and thuggery.
Yeah, I mean, that's relevant. We've got to get rid of that guy is really what it is. We've got to get rid of Villanueva. The fact that there has been open acknowledgement that we have gangs made up of deputies who work for our sheriff's department and nothing is done about it is completely mind-bending. What are your thoughts on that, Nana Gyamfi? What are next steps? I mean, TJ's kind of laid it out, and yes, it's the sheriff's department. It's also the LAPD. I mean, a judge, was it yesterday or the day before, just ruled that they have to stop using projectiles on protesters. A judge had to tell them, quit shooting people who are trying to exercise their right to protest. I thought it was quite telling coming right before this verdict. Thoughts, Attorney Gyamfi?
Absolutely. I mean, okay, so Dominique, you know that I'm an abolitionist. I'm trying to get rid of it all. My goal is to, and what I'm working on every day is how we have no police, no jails, no prisons, no ICE, no CBP, no detention centers. But until abolition comes, there's some definite things that we could be doing moving us towards abolition. And one of the things is clearly that folks need to be removed, fired, terminated, gotten out of there, who don't care about and in fact incite and are perfectly okay with this police violence, and particularly I'm going to focus on racist police violence against black folks and other people of color. And so because that's who the main targets are. So when you look at the sheriff's department, this is not new. Villanueva, it's almost like in this time period, we need to talk more about this astrology. It's almost like in this time period, there are things happening in the sky where all of these things that we've been talking about are coming into the fore in a much more obvious way. When I was in law school, I interned at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and we were doing cases then against the Linwood Sheriffs. Do you remember when the Linwood Sheriffs had the Vikings? I'm sure there were other gangs as well, but that was with...
Yeah, well, that's still there, isn't it? I think they're still there. Yeah.
They're still there.
Yeah.
And so I remember a black judge, Judge Terry Hatter, was like, okay, well, you're not supposed to have these. And so you need to crack down and to end them, to, terminate this gang. Oh, you should have seen the attorneys for the sheriffs falling out, rolling on the floor. How do we do that? Oh, why are you saying that? And he was like, I'm confused. It's a gang. You can't have gangs in the sheriff's department. And here we are now. What I think the count at this point is 18. Right? Gangs within the sheriff's department that are jumping other sheriffs at this point. It's not enough for them to jump civilians. They've now added their own ranks to the crew. And so I think that it's clear that policing is not working. This experiment, which is a long and old experiment, has failed. And we've got to do something else.
I know that you and most of, I think, if not all of Black Lives Matter are abolitionists. This is where we part company. I don't think you just get rid of law enforcement, but I do think you've got to deconstruct and reconstruct public safety, because what we have now is not working. And the same training is producing different results in different neighborhoods. So it can't just be the training. We're being joined by another attorney, Attorney Nana Gyamfi. He's in private practice at Douglas Hicks Law in Los Angeles. He's probably one of the most famous lawyers in America. His work is a member of O.J. Simpson's criminal defense dream team. Of course, well known, but a civil rights attorney, actually covering many, many cases that are relevant to this conversation, including that of Dijon Kazee, who was killed by the sheriff's department, who we were just speaking of. Attorney Carl Douglas, welcome to the program.
Dominique and Nana, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on your show. Nana is one of my soldiers in justice for years. I respect her perspective as well. The conversation about sheriffs is one that has been troubling me for decades, because there has been this sordid history of gangs wearing khakis that have terrorized residents of Los Angeles County literally for decades. I respect the abolitionist perspective, but Dom, I am more siding with you too. Just as the reality, I don't think that there is going to be any quick transformation by abolishing police. But I do strongly believe we do need to reimagine policing. And we do need to have a cultural shift from a warrior mentality of policing that leads to tanks being parked in the driveway at Brooklyn Center in Minnesota, and instead adopt more of a guardian mentality where police actually do protect and serve. I have a great deal of dispute with a lot of things that Mayor Garcetti does, but his tendency now and his experimenting of redirecting $125 million in police funds to other community kinds of organizations and causes is the kind of reimagining that I think needs to happen as the
under extreme pressure from the community. I mean, it's not like he woke up one day and said, let's reimagine public safety.
Oh, well, whatever it takes. No, that's why we need to walk and chew gum, Dom, at the same time. We need to heat the courtrooms and in the streets. We need to, in the court, in the ballot box, and in the streets, we can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Okay, so your quick reaction to the Chauvin verdicts. And I do want to add, Attorney Carl Douglas, that, Nana Gyamfi and Melina Abdullah and Patrisse Cullors and Alicia Garza all along have been saying things that I thought were impossible. So maybe they're right and I'm wrong. I'm open to that. But in my opinion, police are warriors. I mean, that's what they do. How do you make sure the knife doesn't get turned on the one it was meant to protect? But your reaction to this verdict?
Well, just so that your listeners can understand, I have been, Dom, as you and I know, working in this game for 41 years.
Woo!
I have seen the ups and the downs, the highs and the lows. I was relieved that the conviction was attained because all too often there has been frustrations with both the criminal and the civil justice system. But I say that before white folks start patting themselves on their backs about this, it really shows how difficult it is to successfully prosecute police officers and the level of commitment that it must take and the amount of money it must take to be able to successfully prosecute a cop, even when his misdeeds are videotaped and are clear. There were 5 or 6 doctors, 5 use of force experts. You never have that kind of massive collection of the state's might. Individual lawyers lack that kind of resource where they can marshal that overwhelming amount of evidence to successfully prosecute a case. And one thing that struck me really strongly, Tom, is, as Nana can tell you, you can find an expert, my dear, that will say anything if you have the money and look far enough. There were experts that were hired that told you that Chauvin's knee was on the back, not the neck. That told you that he was still breathing, though you could hear the breath and the life coming out of him as he was screaming about he can't breathe. And so it just shows what the challenges that we civil rights activists have trying to seek justice in America. And though this is one bright light, the fight is still fierce, and we must continue seeking justice in this country.